The culture that works for us is when people care as much about the results of the person next to them as they do about their own. Because you can't teach people to care about one another. And when they care about a common goal and a common victory, that's when we see the greatest success in business.
In my time at Notre Dame, I've leaned on insights from a host of great leaders. And one topic that typically comes up is culture. Enter Benchwarmers, a series of conversations about winning cultures, how they're developed, how they're sustained, and even what undoes them. Like many spirited conversations at Notre Dame, we share these ideas on a bench. This first season was filmed in 2019, before the pandemic would have made this production much different. Our next guest is Rohr Schwab, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for electric adventure vehicle manufacturer Rivian. A graduate of Notre Dame and former captain of the women's tennis team, Rohr has served as the Director of Marketing at Jaguar Land Rover and became the first female president of Aston Martin the Americas before joining Rivian in 2020. Rohr and her husband Nick have one daughter, a leader on the move. Please welcome Rohr Schwab.
Well, happy to be here.
It's great to have you here today on a very crisp fall day in South Bend, Indiana.
It feels good.
Why Notre Dame? How did you wind up here?
My parents, I think, really wanted one of us to go to Notre Dame, which, you know, when you're in high school, you pretty much decide you're gonna do the opposite of what your parents want you to do. And anyway, I started looking at Notre Dame, and I knew I wanted a school that was excellent in academics and excellent in tennis. And I came on my recruiting trip, and I knew instantly. It was a weekend, Notre Dame was playing Stanford, all the sports were playing, and I fell in love. And I knew that this is desperately where I wanted to go. And there was only one scholarship that year, and I was fortunate enough to get it. So it ended up being the best decision of my life.
What was the culture like inside the household growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had the best tennis parents because they instilled in me, you know, the drive to work hard and try to fulfill my dreams, but also how to be a really good sport and what it looks like when things don't go your way. So it was good. It was a very structured life that I had as a high school tennis player. You know, there's a lot of structure around getting up at 4:30 to go to the courts at 5 a.m.
Sure.
It wasn't sort of a normal childhood because I wasn't doing all the same things that other kids were doing. And I always said I didn't feel like I quite fit in. And it didn't really happen until I came to Notre Dame and joined the tennis team. And all of a sudden, I was surrounded by all these people that had been doing the exact same thing I've been doing.
Yeah.
And then I think that's how Notre Dame ended up feeling like home, away from home.
And then you wound up as captain of the team.
I did, yes.
What did you learn about leadership being captain of an athletic team?
My senior year, that's what I really started to learn what it meant for people to look at you for what it looks like to win and to lose and how we recover from it. So it was a thrill.
I always think one of the great things about the athletic experience is there's a period of time in it where you have to learn to be led.
Yes, of course.
And then you have to learn to lead.
Absolutely.
And, you take lessons from people all along the journey in that regard.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, obviously you've got your coaches that become so pivotal, not only in your performance on the court, but also your performance academically. I mean, they're really encouraging us. And then to then be captain and help lead the team towards what that's supposed to look like, you know, especially for the freshmen coming in. Yeah. It's a huge responsibility. So now I'm like, I think I could have done a few things better, but we can't go back in time on that one.
You and I share several characteristics or histories. One of them is we're both recovering lawyers. It seems like you determined pretty early that wasn't for you. And then you did something which I find so often is the case with people who achieve at your level. You took a big risk. You just said, I'm going in a different direction without the opportunity being immediately in front of you. What was that scary?
You know what? At the time, I'm not sure I realized how scary it was. I think about it now, like would I have done the same thing? And I literally picked up my stuff and I took my resume, which basically said, I'd gone to Notre Dame, I played tennis here, and I'd gone to law school, and I moved to California, and I begged for jobs. And I basically got rejected from everything because I was told I had no experience. And I'm like, yes, I realize this. This is why I'm trying to get experience. And I'd applied for a job. I didn't even know what the company did. They were looking for hardworking, energetic people who knew something about the internet. I was like, 2 out of 3, I don't know anything about the internet, but I'm hardworking and energetic. And I walked in the door and they talked to me. They're like, we see you went to Notre Dame. Well, you played sports. That's impressive. You know, what do you know about cars? It's like, oh yeah, I love cars. What do you know about the internet? Not much. And this little tiny startup company that happened to sell cars online hired me as like their 11th employee and paid me about $20,000. And, and that was my big risk.
You go from the 11th employee there to president of the Americas for Aston Martin. How have you approached building the culture with the employees you are responsible for?
Yeah, so I really have an obsession over company cultures. You know, the traits that I look for, it's interesting, you know, when people apply for a job, and, you know, Aston Martin is like a dream job for people. And I always think, I can teach you the car business because I know it so well and I've been doing it for so long, but I can't teach people to want to be part of a team. And the culture that works for us is when people care as much about the results of the person next to them as they do about their own. And when we recruit, we look for people that want to buy into that type of culture and a team culture, because they're the ones that don't just sort of finish up at the end of the day and walk out the door. They look to the person next to them. Do you need any help? And I've been reflecting on it a bit because, you know, I look for people that are athletes. You know, if I see that they've played sports, I know that that already sits in their soul and their heart, because you can't teach people to care about one another. And when they care about a common goal and a common victory, that's when we see the greatest success in business. How
do you translate that culture to the customer?
They feel it when they meet us. We want to be an approachable brand. And I think, again, that sort of team culture, it translates to how we communicate with our customers. They feel a real warmth to how we approach the business.
How do you compare yourself today as the president to the captain of the team back here then? What translates? What did you bring to bear here that still works, and what have you learned since?
I know I had the leadership skills and the desire to be connected to people, and being a part of the tennis team here was one of the greatest thrills of my life. And being the captain, I think that's where my leadership skills really started. And then that's what's really translated. But I would like to go back to myself from that many years ago and you know, maybe say like enjoy it a bit more.
Yeah.
You know, slow down. Don't wish the time away. You know, this place has defined my life and my career and has been responsible for, I really believe, the success I've had in business.
You're not only extremely accomplished as a leader in an industry, but you've become a spokesperson for women.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that responsibility and why you feel it and why you act on it.
So when I took this role, I'm one of 2 women to have ever had this role in the automotive industry ever. And while I knew I'd really like fought my way to get here, I don't know if I understood what a big deal it was. And then I started meeting, especially young women, and they're like, "You're my idol. I want to be like you. How did you do it? How did you fight to get into the boardroom? How did you not sit in the back of the room and actually find a way to sit at the table?" And over the last few years, I've seen that there really needs to be a platform to talk about it and to talk about ways of making your way in an industry that is male dominated. And the automotive industry is very male dominated. How do we get there? How do we ask for what we want? And you can do it, and you can still be quite nice. It's funny. People say that, it's like, "Oh, and she's actually nice." I'm like, is that yes, I guess, you can be successful in business and bring people with you. And so the last few years, I've seen that there needs to be a voice about how women can succeed in male-dominated industries, or succeed when they doubt themselves, or succeed when they feel like there's no avenues, or that nobody's listening. And now having a 3-year-old daughter, it's important for me to use my voice now that I can to pave the way so that when she grows up, that she's not one of two of anything. So can I ask you a question, Jack?
I'd love it.
I think about this a lot, and when I meet great leaders like yourself too, what do you look for externally outside of athletics to influence, your day-to-day and your strategic approach to what you do here?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One is your worst nightmare would be being my seatmate on a plane, because when I find a really great leader, I love to pick their brain. I love to ask them about their approach to leadership, challenges they've faced. And so that's the first thing for me. And it's rarely a sport leader, right? It's somebody in a completely unrelated industry. I want to understand how that works. The other is that I think looking at unrelated industries, especially things like media and technology, and trying to understand how sort of the currents moving through those industries translate and are likely to have an influence on us. I don't read a lot of athletics things, but I'll read Wired magazine cover to cover every month, and I'll look for other articles and speeches in unrelated industries where it really causes me to think differently, and sort of expands the range of, especially with the young people we work with, right?
Of course.
I mean, they are thinking differently. They've grown up in a communications world which is fundamentally different than ours.
Yeah, of course.
And the issue of how you communicate effectively, and how you work together to produce great results, you can't be internal and think about those things. You've got to cast the broadest net you can.
Yeah, no, I so appreciate that, because I tell people when they're looking for mentors, don't just look for a mentor inside the industry within which you work. Look outside of it, because that actually will allow you to expand your thinking beyond just the industry that you work in. So I could totally relate.
Wherever I can find anybody who will share those insights, I am thrilled to get them. And you take little kernels away, and you bring them back to your business and hopefully make it better.
Absolutely.
Two final questions before I let you go warm up.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah, you're doing great. The first is, what brand of bourbon?
My go-to really is Maker's Mark.
Okay, I'm a Blanton's guy.
I like some Blantons, but my day-to-day is Maker's Mark.
And finally, why this bench?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously this bench is important to me because we're sitting here on these courts in this beautiful facility. And I don't know, like the blood, sweat, and tears, but more importantly, the friendships, the teammates, and the coaches. This is what's defined my career in business. And I really attribute my success to what happened here. And I get quite emotional about it, because if it weren't for Notre Dame and if it weren't for this bench and these courts. I don't think I would have had the guts to go to California and take the risks and move all over the world, and now to be fortunate enough to sit in this position. So it's very special, a special place, and I'm unbelievably proud and humbled to represent the University of Notre Dame.
Thanks for joining us on the bench.
Thanks,
it has
Jeff.
been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Go Irish.
Go Irish.